Hey guys, so for this video I am going to be doing a movie review of A Haunting in Venice. When I originally heard this movie, I didn't realize that it was going to be a Poirot, what the fuck you say his name, movie. And so when I saw the trailer, I wasn't sure if it was going to be a movie, one of his movies, but apparently it was. Let's just get to the plot first. So this takes place in post-war Venice, and Poirot is retired, and he has hired a policeman to kind of be his bodyguard to keep away people who keep wanting him to solve cases for them. So it's actually kind of funny and also just weird. I don't know, but you get these group of people who just hang out hang out outside his building, and he'll go walking, and they'll start chasing after him, asking him to solve cases. And then there's this, we see him walk past this alleyway, and then right away this guy sticks out his arm and clotheslines one of the people. And he turns out to be a bodyguard, and so he just follows him, as he go along, and then he ends up pushing, the bodyguard ends up pushing one of the people into the river. So he's literally just there to stop people from chasing after him, wanting him to solve cases. And at first you're like, this doesn't really seem like something he would do. And so, but it kind of, later on in the series, you kind of understand why he's doing it. But yeah, one Halloween, a mystery writer who is an acquaintance of his, he convinces him to come to a Halloween party with a seance, because she wants to expose the medium as a fraud. And so, of course, at first, Poirot is very iffy about it. He doesn't, believe in, mediums and stuff like that. The opera singer wants the medium to come to her house because he wants her to call up her daughter, who committed suicide a year earlier, after her fiance had broken up with her. And of course, we also kind of get introduced to the people. After he agrees to this, he comes to her house, and we're kind of introduced to all the different characters. So there's the opera singer, and then of course there's also the housekeeper, the doctor who was in love with the daughter who died, and his son, and then the medium's assistant was also there. And during the seance, the medium uses a typewriter to communicate, where she asks a question, and the spirit types out the first letter of the answer, which of course, it always makes me chuckle, how blatantly obviously some of these, what fraud some of these people are. They'll do the most vague shit imaginable, and then, people will act like they're actually talking to the dead. So, you can literally come up with any answer, ask your question and give them one letter, and you can literally, because of your own, bias, wanting to come up with the answer, you'll come up with whatever, will conform to your bias. And so it's just kind of irritating me how gullible some people are. Why couldn't the ghost just spell out, the actual answers, instead of just making it so that it can easily be as vague as possible? This kind of stuff irritates me, let's just say that. But what's also kind of funny, because apparently Arthur Conan Doyle was also a believer in the supernatural, which is ironic considering how he was the creator of Sherlock Holmes. But apparently him and Houdini knew each other, I guess, fairly well, and so one day, I guess, Conan Doyle wanted to try to convince Houdini that, you know, mediums were real and all this, and so he brought him to do a seance, I guess, with his Conan Doyle's wife, and, you know, who wanted to contact her mother, but Houdini kept poking holes in all his, you know, all of the, you know, the, I guess the, what do you call it, the ghosts, you know, keep poking holes in all the I don't know, he kept, you know, coming up with reasons why that wasn't actually happening. One of them, I think, was that, you know, the ghost didn't actually know the birthday of the mom, of her wife's mother, and so eventually apparently put a rift between the two of them, between Houdini and Conan Doyle, which I kind of thought was funny. But anyways, kind of a sidetrack, but anyways. So in this movie, they're doing the seance, you know, asking questions of the ghost, and then the windows end up blowing open, and of course Poirot was able to figure out that was all a fake. There was another assistant in the fireplace who was controlling the typewriter, who left a footprint in ash where there shouldn't have been a footprint, because there wasn't supposed to be anyone in this room for a year, you know, since the daughter died. And of course the assistant had a string to pull open the windows, which I did suspect that it was probably a fraud. I mean, I guess that didn't take much, because, you know, it's a Poirot movie, that's highly likely, but still, you know, I know there are ways to fake this shit. I just couldn't come up with it because I'm lazy. But yeah, he was able to come up with the reason why. After, of course, she's revealed to be a fake, she starts spinning around in a chair that she's sitting on, and, you know, doing this girl's voice that the opera singer says is her daughter. Of course, you can't fake that, can you? Of course, he talks to the medium after all of this, and he says, you know, what she does, you know, is essentially exploiting people, but she says that she's helping grieving people, you know, and yeah, because what fraud hasn't said that, claim that they're wanting to help people by, you know, making them pay you to, you know, claim that, you know, that you know, your dead relatives are speaking through them. But yeah, she ends up telling him to lighten up, and she then puts the mask on him, and, you know, the cloak that she was wearing, and so he kind of starts thinking about what she said, I guess, and so he puts on the mask and the cloak, and then starts bobbing for apples, I guess, to lighten up like she told him to do, and he almost gets drowned because of it. Someone tries to drown him, and then of course they end up leaving, and he, you know, turns out that the medium was found impaled on a statue in the yard. Of course, there's a storm that traps them inside the castle, house, whatever, because apparently they're on the river, and so they can't escape, except by boat, I guess. And then Poirot starts seeing things that he's not supposed to be seeing. He's not sure if they are ghosts or if he's just, you know, going crazy or what. And then we kind of, that's when we get introduced to all the characters and kind of go through what their possible motives are. So Leslie is the doctor who has PTSD from when he helped liberate concentration camp, and he does have episodes where he'll kind of lose it and become violent, which his sons helps him through. And of course he's the one who was in love with the daughter as well. The fiance, douchebag, barges his way into the house because he wasn't actually invited. He's the one who'd broken up the engagement with the daughter because the mother didn't approve of him, and he felt that the daughter cared too much about his her mother's opinion, and you know, too much about keeping her mother happy. And so the kid you know, the son of the doctor, says that he hears the voices of children who were left during the plague to die, when the house was an orphanage. And of course, this kid was creepy as fuck because he's one of those kids that are very mature for his age. And his name was Leopold, which didn't help at all because he just reminded me of one of those two. I mean, technically they were adults, but still, one of the two, they were 17 and 18 when they decided to kill a classmate to see if they could get away with it. So he just automatically goes to that, and those two boys, and then just creeps me out, I guess. And of course, the two assistants of the medium are Romanian. They're siblings or half siblings, and they are stealing from the medium because they want to go to Missouri, which kind of threw me because who would want to go to fucking Missouri? But apparently, they saw Meet Me in St. Louis when they were in a displaced persons camp, and so they kind of became enamored with that and decided they wanted to go to Missouri to try to escape what happened. So that is when Poirot is able to discover a hidden room to the basement where he discovers the skeleton of all the children that died during the plague. So I guess it wasn't actually just a child's tale. It actually happened. And during this time, the fiance decided to be a dumbass, and he starts a fight with the doctor, causing the doctor to have an episode, and the doctor almost fucking slices the fiance throat on a pane of glass, but his son was able to talk him down, which was kind of a sad scene. And then after this, they put the doctor in a room to recover and gave Poirot the key because it's supposed to be like no way in or out except for through the doors. This is when Poirot kind of figures out that the bodyguard and the writer were in cahoots to get him to come to the opera singer's house. So they kind of mislead him to come to the opera singer's house. The bodyguard admitted to giving the writer details because he was the police officer on the case when the girl killed herself. And the writer admitted to wanting to use Poirot's inability to solve the case as a kind of the plot in her next book, which apparently she isn't doing too well financially. So they decide that they're going to, manipulate him into coming to the house. But their kind of like argument is interrupted when it's discovered that the doctor has been stabbed to death, and Poirot, I'm assuming that they think Poirot's the one who did it because he's the only one who had the key. But then Poirot gathers everyone together and reveals that it was actually the mother who killed the daughter. Apparently the mother was obsessed with keeping her daughter to herself. Because her daughter wanted to go back to her fiance, kind of make up with her, and so she decides to cut her off from the rest of the world by poisoning her with honey and poison-infused honey. So she would feed her tea like laced with this honey, and it caused hallucinations, and so but the housekeeper, one night after the mother kind of takes a break, she'd seen the mother feed the girl honey, or tea laced with honey, and so she decides to do the same, but she overdoses, and so the girl ends up dying because of it, and the mother, panicking because she doesn't want anyone to find out what happened, she slashes her daughter's back and so that she can, you know, blame it on this, like, story of these kids, you know, the haunted story of the kids or whatever, and then throws her out the window into the water. So this entire thing, you know, this, you know, the seance came about because the mother has been blackmailed by someone who's figured out what she's done, and she's kind of gone bankrupt because of all the money they've sent to the blackmailer. And so she tries to figure out who is blackmailed so she can kill them. So she gathered everyone together. She suspects either the medium or the doctor, because the medium sent a letter to her, and then the doctor also, I think, also sent a letter that made her suspicious of him. So she's the one who pushes the medium off the balcony, forcing the doctor, and she's the one who forced the doctor to kill himself by calling him on the phone in the room, and threatening that she would hurt his son if he did not do it. And I think he was already kind of suicidal in the first place, and probably feeling, you know, worthless, and that his son would be better off without him, and so he kills himself. She was also the one who tried to drown Poirot because she thought he was a medium, because he was wearing her cloak, and she wanted to death, of course, the deaths to look like the part of the child's curse that supposedly killed her daughter as well. And of course, I called it. Poirot was being poisoned. She had been poisoning him with the same honey that she used to poison her daughter, which causes hallucination. So, you know, it's still kind of like speculated as to whether or not things he was hearing was actually ghosts, or they're just hallucination caused by, you know, him being poisoned. So they don't really clear that up, really. They kind of leave it open to interpretation. But anyway, she ends up escaping, and she goes to the roof, and he tries to stop her, but we see that she gets pulled off the roof, apparently, and pulled down into the water by what we're supposed to believe is her daughter's ghost. But once again, we're not sure if this is just a hallucination or if it's actually a ghost. Poirot's the only one who saw it. The end result of everything, the bodyguard doesn't really get in trouble for his part. He reveals that the kid was actually the blackmailer. The kid was able to figure out that the mother was the one poisoning the daughter, because the opera singer was in an opera where she was the king of poisons. And so, yeah, and he wanted to use the money to help support his father, and, you know, ultimately, sadly, resulted in his father's death. And so, of course, he still has all the money from blackmailing the woman, and so Poirot suggests that do something good with it. So the kid gives the money to the siblings so that they can go to America. And then, of course, the housekeeper decides to take care of the kid because, yeah, I mean, it wasn't her fault the daughter died. She didn't realize it was poisoned. And so, and I'm sure this is kind of a way to, she probably feels is a way to make up for what she did. And, but yeah, Poirot goes back to home, and he starts working the cases again to people who need it. And so, it's kind of a full circle. And so, beginning, he is very much a recluse, and, you know, he is just kind of having these issues because of what happened during the war. And by the end, he's kind of come to terms with those, you know, what happened, and is going back to helping people. So, and to like some development in the movie. So when I watched this, I thought that this was going to be a more no-nonsense mystery, and but it turns out to be more emotional than I thought it was. We get to see the effects of World War II on Poirot and all the other characters, which made it a lot more emotional. It was a beautifully shot movie. There's a shot where the medium is coming to the house, and she's on one of those boats you know, I don't know what you call them. They're the ones you see in Venice. But it's Halloween, and so like the Roman have like, I'm assuming like the plague dress. That's where they're supposed to be. And then the medium is at the head of the ship, and she has on a cloak, and she has on a geisha mask. And it's really creepy, but also beautifully shot. So it's kind of scenes like that. It's just a beautifully shot movie. Mystery wise, I suspected some of the things. Like I said, I just didn't really kind of figure out the particulars, and there was a lot more emotional elements that made me care about the characters, like the father suffering from PTSD. So there's this one particularly emotional scene where, no, it's just after he had almost killed a guy, and they have him lay down on the, you know, the bed in the room that he eventually dies in, and his son is bathing his face, and you know, the father is like, you shouldn't be the one taking care of me, I should be the one taking care of you, and the son's like, you are taking care of me. And so it's like really emotional and sad, and kind of why this movie was more emotional for me, kind of made me care about the characters and the relationships with each other. There was differences from the book, between the book and the movie. In the book, the girl was killed by drowning, because she might have seen a murder, because she's like boasting about seeing a murder. And so she gets killed, and so they bring Poirot in to investigate, to figure out, you know, what happened. I think her name was Olive, right? Olivia, something like that, the writer. She's played by Tina Fey in the movie. In the movie, or in the book, she feels a lot more stuck up. You know, a lot more posh, if you will. Not as intelligent, I feel, in the book, or it doesn't come off that way. Whereas in the movie, Tina Fey's character comes off more charming. And so that's kind of, it's just a kind of different feel between the two characters, between the movie and the book. And the book feels a lot more impersonal, more focused on the mysteries, and that's kind of how Agatha Christie's books are. They always felt more like impersonal, not as emotional, more focused on the mystery. The cast, the character, or the actor who plays Poirot, I don't know why I didn't realize it until now, but he's the guy who plays Gilderoy Lockhart in the second Harry Potter movie, so Kenneth Branagh. He's also the voice of McGill in The Road to El Dorado, and of course I knew he plays Niels Bohr in Oppenheimer, so I did not know he was the director for Thor, which I shouldn't be surprised if you actually look at his all of his roles before. He has so much Shakespeare in his, like, most of his acting roles are from Shakespeare, which, I mean, he's English, and you'll notice a lot of English actors have a lot of Shakespeare in their history, so it shouldn't be surprising, but, yeah, because Thor also is very much heavy on Shakespeare. Of course, the Doctor, he's played by Jamin Dornan, and I was wondering why the fuck he looks so much like Henry Cavill, because he also wears that mustache that Henry Cavill has, you know, worn. But yep, it's actually Jamin Dornan from, you know, the plays Grey in the 50 Shades of Grey movies. I actually liked him in this role. I think it's the only role I've seen him in that I actually do like him, because, I don't know, he was more sympathetic in this movie, you know, and the relationship between him and his character and his son were very emotional. And of course, the writer was played by Tina Fey, and mostly known for comedy, and she has more of a sarcastic humor in this, which I thought was okay. And of course the medium was Michelle Yeoh, who, you know, I mean, it's not her biggest, like, you know, she was going to die anyways in the movie, so she was okay. There's other roles I preferred her in. So it was directed again by Kenan Bronnen, and the writer was Michael Green. He's been involved in a variety of things. He was involved in American Gods, which I have not. I've seen like one episode, but I want to watch the entire series because it has Ricky Whittle. He played Lincoln in the 100, and they fucking pissed me off when they killed him off in the 100. So I'm glad he got some work. I definitely want to watch the rest of the because I think they also canceled that eventually, right? Which pissed me off again, but I still want to watch it. The River. Well, that I've seen The River before, but that was like during my teenage years, and I just want to go rewatch it. It's like the one season, you know, found footage show about, you know, these people go on to this river, and I remember there's like doll heads. Because of course, that's what I remember. Those things creep me the fuck out. So I still want to go rewatch it. He's gotten a lot of praise for Heroes, the show. Green Lantern, he was involved in, which, yeah, he probably doesn't want to be known for that. He was involved in Logan, Alien Covenant, Blade Runner 2049, and of course the other two Poirot movies, Murder on the Orient Express and Death on the Nile. And he did get nominated for Best Adapted Screenplay for Logan. So he was one of the ones nominated. But yeah, so yeah, I guess you could say he's respected in this field. Cinematographer, I wouldn't even try to pronounce his name. He did the cinematography for Thor, Mamma Mia, Murder on the Orient Express, Death on the Nile, and he's going to be doing the cinematography for Beetlejuice 2. And of course the composer, once again, won't try to pronounce her name. She's the composer for the Joker movie. So great composer already. I love the Joker soundtrack. She also did Prisoners, Sakara, The Revenant, Arrival. Love that movie. Sakara, Day of the Soldado. And then the second Joker movie she's going to be doing soundtrack for, and she did it for the Chernobyl show. So again, respected composer. The reception for this movie, it made $113.1 million on a $60 million budget. So, I mean, I guess it did decent for, you know, this more, it's not as scary movie. It's more like a mystery slash, I wouldn't say horror. It's more of a mystery. So, I'm sure they didn't expect it to make a shit ton of money, but I think it did decent. On Rotten Tomatoes, 75% of the 272 critics reviews were positive, with an average rating of 6.5 out of 10, and the consensus read, "A darker and spookier spin on Poirot, A Haunting in Venice is a decent Halloween snack whose undemanding mystery gets a lift from nifty visuals and an all-star cast." I mean, obviously the mystery wasn't that splashy, I guess, but I did like the more emotional aspect, you know, of the movie, more focus on the characters and kind of their backstories and tragedies they've gone through. I felt that really made the movie. Justin Chang of the Los Angeles Times said, "What lingers from the movie isn't the usual assemblage of clues and red herrings, but a free-floating air of grief, much of it rooted in the character's turbulent memories of the war just a few years earlier." Agreed. Sable Chatterjee wrote for NDTV, "A Haunting in Venice, a couple of jump scares notwithstanding, may not chill you to the bones, but as a story focused on the emotional and psychological fallout of a devastating war, it works brilliantly." Matt Zoller Sith, acclaimed the screenplay, direction, and production values and said, "Movies are rarely directed in this style anymore. He added that it was an emphatic portrayal of the death-haunted mentality of people from the director's parents' generations. So I'm assuming he's kind of referring to, you know, the generation that experienced war and kind of how it impacted their filmmaking. And so he's kind of, you know, kind of pointing out how this movie kind of reflects that, which isn't really in filmmaking anymore. Kristen Lopez writes for The Wrap, felt that almost all the characters were underdeveloped due to the attention given to the production values, but praises the performance, singling out Riley Dornan and Yu. Yeah, kind of opposite of the others, you know, talking about how, you know, it was more emotional because of the characters' backstories, you know, focus on their kind of the tragedies they experienced during war, but this time they focus more on the production. So really does show you how people's, you know, can take different things away from movies, huh? And then in one of the negative reviews, critic Carolyn, I don't know, I'm going to say Carolyn James found the film uninvolving and said, the new film is much pokier in its pacing with duller characters. She commended the director, Faye, and Cotton's performance while stating that so many actors in the cast were sleepwalking. In an equally negative review, David Fear of Rolling Stone called the film anemic and sluggish and said audiences would be bored to death. Ironically, I wasn't really bored to death. It's kind of one of the slower movies I've seen, but still, it was the more emotional elements that kept me in the movie, because if you can really make me sympathize with you, then, you know, you can get me to watch the rest of the movie, because, you know, I want to see more of the characters, you know. And so, yeah, it's just, you know, one of those movies, you know, people just take whatever they take out of the movies, sometimes completely different, you know, views of it, but but overall, this movie I actually did enjoy. I thought it was going to be like just a paint by numbers, I don't know if say horror movie, but just a paint by numbers movie. And, you know, it surprised me in the more like focusing on the emotional aspects of the characters, you know, their backstory. So if you want to go watch not a horror movie, but if you want to watch a movie for Halloween, I think you might get a few scares out of this, but you still, you know, if you want a more emotional movie, you'll also get some, you know, pleasure out of it with that. So yeah, so that was my review of A Haunting in Venice. So if you did like this video, give a like, subscribe, get notifications for all the videos I'll be doing. You guys have a nice night. Stay safe out there. Talk to you later.